Evening, Tony Datino, doing my live with Tony on Monday night. The Thanksgiving holiday season is done, and now we move towards Christmas. So the holidays are fast approaching, and wanted to continue to do my one Monday, Wednesday, Friday live with Tony's during this time of the year, and hopefully have some suggestions for people on how they can deal with some of the stress and some of the challenges that we face during the season. But overall, happy Thanksgiving, and I hope we all had something that we take away from it that was a good time with family, with friends, with folks that we had a chance to share some dinner with, and maybe some laughs, and hopefully some football games with the right teams coming out for you. But I wanted to cover a very interesting excerpt I was reading that really comes from a book called Anxiety, Good Anxiety, if I can write that down for my own remembrance. And it was interesting because it started off with having you think about words that people speak when they're talking to you, especially during these times of COVID, that start off with, I'm on edge, or I'm stressed out, I'm being distracted, I'm so nervous, I'm just ready to give up. Boy, I've got a case of anxiety. Or I'm just worried about so many different things. So as I've talked to people now, just over the last several days, there's so many people worried about the new strain of the COVID virus and what's likely to happen, and shutdowns. And boy, we have blanks. As I always say, when the brain has blanks, we crave completeness. So I'm looking at this, and it talks about good anxiety. And this was a book that was written by a professor from New York University, who works in the psychology department there, has this book on good anxiety and the power that we can get from a misunderstood emotion, which is anxiety. So what does this author do to maintain her own levels of resilience, which is the key word that comes from it? How do we build resilience so that when we have a worried, stressed, distracted moment, or this idea of giving up, what can we do to begin to make some small changes in our daily thinking patterns that can make a big difference? And so the first thing that they excerpted from the book was, how do we begin to visualize a different set of outcomes? How do we begin to say, well, gee, how can I take this particular situation I'm in? And is there a way that I can make this into a positive outcome? So, for example, in the early stages of COVID, my goodness, as everything was getting locked down, shut down, the Latino consulting business shut down. So what can I do to visualize positive outcomes? So I reached out to people I've known in the past and just, how you doing? And how are you managing? Look, anything I can do to help. I'm not billing for it. Just let's stay in touch and let's figure it out. And as we're coming back through the COVID season or pandemic, and we're hoping that we get to the other side, at least I have some people that knew that even when the times were tough and rough, I was there to reach out and try to create different outcomes for them. And as I've said to some of the senior executives I've dealt and talked with, I'm here for you, and I'm not billing at this stage. We're in a whole different world, and we can get a positive outcome from it. And I always remember that because I was doing a lot of consulting work during the time when 9/11, 2001, had these planes went into these locations. And I always remember reaching out to several of my clients at that time and just saying, I'm here to help you through this in whatever you do. And I happen to have an airline, a utility company, the subway line in New York City. And I reached out to my senior executives that I was working with in each case, and I just let them know I was there for them, and I wasn't looking for invoicing, billing, or anything of any sort, but I understood there was nothing I was going to do to change what had happened to the buildings and the properties that were destroyed. But there was something I could do to make a difference in the lives of the people that I had built relationships with and provided the valuable skills and service to. that I could now come back and offer as just a good friend and somebody that wanted to make a difference and help people get through a really challenging time. Now that comes from, where do I get this positive outcome from? Well, our brains, they call it, has great plasticity, meaning we are able to take situations and we're able to reframe them if we understood what the skill was and how we could do that. So we are all going to have, as I always remember Norman Vincent Peale saying one time, boy, if you want to find people that don't have problems, go up to the cemeteries and go visit your friends. They don't have problems anymore. But if you're alive and you're living a life of something, things are going to come at you. Challenges will come and be a part of your life just about on a regular basis, whatever that may be. Sometimes once a month, sometimes once a quarter, sometimes once a day. But you go through cycles, as they call it, the roller coaster of life. And what we have is a brain that has the plasticity to be able to take any given situation and make a valid assessment of it. And I say valid because sometimes when we say we're in anxiety, we're in stress, oh God, I'm on edge, I'm at my wit's end. We don't engage what I call the creativity of our mind to say, okay, I've got this challenge in front of me, and how am I going to go through the maze of life and figure out how to get to the other side, recognizing I've got these challenges that will constantly pop up and be in front of me. So what can I do to minimize those challenges, to deal with the issues that I have in my life, and use the brain's creativity to always figure out, how do I find opportunity from those challenges? Now, I do not say that that's easy. I do not say just because I said it's so that you just make it and poof, it happens like pixie dust. No, what I say is if we can step back sometimes and get away from what I call that immediate emotional charge and reflect on what really is happening, and then make a proper assessment of what does it mean to your life? What does it mean to your immediate situation? And can you find alternative pathways around it, through it, or opportunities within it? Then our brain's plasticity will engage in its creative, innovative process and give us a chance to take, as we say, what? Make lemons into lemonade. And so take the challenges and then reframe exactly what is happening. And I think about this very often because way back when, I had a teacher in school, way back in my early days, that said I wasn't going to amount to much of anything. And that was in the early grades of grammar school. And it says, how does a teacher know in the early frame stages of grammar school of what you're going to amount to? And I would suggest those teachers should be fired, but that's another story. But how did I reframe that? Well, as I got older and I started to build some new skills and I started to learn how to do things differently, I built a confidence. I had a dear friend in Tony Buzan who gave me the confidence that I could do something with my life that I had never thought possible. And so, bingo, I left my job at IBM, started my own consulting business, and 30 years later, I'm still cooking, I'm still working it, and I'm still engaging and enjoying and learning. And here we go, I'm learning about there's good anxiety if we can just figure out how to position that within ourselves. So how do we change this and make things that we worry about into a positive? So one, for example, we worry about, or we get emotionally tied up with being angry. Now, anger can be a demoralizing thing, and it can certainly cause us, as I say sometimes, people that get angry, they do some dumb things because their emotion flies up. They don't think well, and sometimes they hit people, shoot people, throw things away, just lose it. How about if we reframe that anger and use it as a positive way to think about what can we do with that anger to motivate, to generate some energy in the creative mind and figure out how to deal with the anger in a positive way. Well, if we're angry about something, what can we do to take it and funnel it in a positive direction and create better outcomes resilience, resilience to it in a way that leads us to doing something we may not have thought to do if we just stayed in this state of, I'm going to continue to be angry at this. I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm just going to be fired up. How about fear? Another emotion we have is fear. And fear, it teaches us how to be careful. It teaches us lessons if we've gotten hurt. And I always think about kids. Kids, they talk about kids that are fearless. I remember a neighbor with a 5-year-old who thought it was fun to stick screwdrivers into electrical sockets until he got a little jolt one day and said, whoa. And it shouldn't teach him to be afraid of doing anything in life, but there's a lesson to be learned in terms of we need to be careful and reflect on given situations and what they mean, and they may harm us, they may hurt us in some fashion. So fear is another emotion that if we overdo it, it can paralyze us and lock us down. Or if we use it as a careful reflection of what's going on, we may be able to have a benefit from it. One last emotion that I want to talk about today, and I hear especially during holiday seasons, is this notion of sadness, isolation, loneliness. Especially during COVID lockdowns, people are sad, they're lonely, they feel isolated. So what can you do? Well, we can take a look at the environment we're in. We can start to at least think about people in our lives that we can pick up, maybe people we haven't talked to in years, and we pick up the phone and talk to them. Maybe we can all learn how to do more Zooms or Skypes or webinars and things of that sort, where we get to see people, facial expressions, what people look like, listen to their voices, reconnect with them, and if all fails, pick up a telephone, get on a phone call. So there are so many things that we can do with the emotions that sometimes inhibit us and freeze us and paralyze us. And just with a little bit of a switch in our plasticity of our thinking, we can turn them into positive outcomes. And wherever I've seen people successfully navigate through that, I've seen them take lemon and turn it into lemonade. Life's experiences that people were living through, and thought that was so sad and lost, into something that was incredible and fantastic. If you listen or read the biographies of so many great people and so many great minds, and I think of Walt Disney, he was on the verge of bankruptcy when he went ABC, and his brother, and they helped to get some funding and finances, and look at where the world of Disney is. At least here in Florida, it's into its 50th year, big celebrations. And if you go back and read the biography of Walt Disney, he had some hardships. He overcame, he had some resilience, and he created some amazing things that we all can enjoy and share and pleasure with. And it's the joy of happiness that went from the doldrums of depression and sadness into the magic kingdom of the world. That's where I want to stop with this evening. I'm going to pick this up. I got some more parts to cover on the daily habits of resilience, and I will pick the rest of those up on my broadcast coming this Wednesday. So have a good week. We're off and going, and got another week in front of us that we should enjoy and practice resilience. Recognize that we can visualize some things that are positive. We have a brain that has plasticity, and we can take the elements of anger, fear, and sadness and use them to our benefit if we just take the time to say, now, how might I do this? What might I do to take my anger and funnel it into a constructive force of energy with a good outcome? How do I take the fears I've got and learn things about it that maybe I can figure out how to help other people? And what can I do with my circumstances and my actions to move from sadness, isolation, and loneliness, to go out and maybe meet some people that we can collaborate and socialize with together, and make a difference for them as well as for yourself? Have a good night. We'll see you on Wednesday.